point, but if you haven't solved the puzzle, I'm Anthony Rosenterritz, 100% the biggest brother.
Best brother!
And
the best brother!
And the best brother. I've known Joe for like a little bit.
A lifetime.
One of my favorite memories of Joe growing up is Joe decided one time when he was about this big that he was going to run away from home. Why did he do that? I think mom told him to clean his room. I have this great image of my little brother running across my mom's yard in nothing but Spider-Man whitey tighties. This big. With like a stick thrown over his shoulder and a knapsack full of cookies. If I'm being honest, I think he made it for about 30 minutes. He finished all his cookies and came home. Growing up with Joe is a pretty classic progression you would expect from four brothers. Like typical brothers close in age, we did everything together. We ate together, we walked to school together, we got chased by moose trying to get to the school bus together. As you might know, there are four of us, Peter and Christian. Peter and Christian are right over there.
Whoop, whoop.
It was kind of a pretty common, like brotherly love, trickle down sort of situation where Peter picked on Christian, and then Christian picked on me, and then I picked on Joe, which basically equated to all the older brothers picked on Joe. It's just kind of the bad luck of being a younger brother, or is it because of an old Mayan crystal that you pulled out of a pyramid once? Some of you know this story. We went to Cozumel when we were younger, and Joe was walking with some of our uncles, and something caught Joe's eye. And there's obviously ropes because you can't go right next to the Mayan ruins, right? There's security guards, and your parents should be watching you. But Joe saw something he liked, so he sprinted under the rope, and I'm watching him do it. Like, what's he doing? He sprints under the rope, and he goes and digs around in this Mayan rune, an ancient Mayan rune, and he comes back just elated, so excited. And he holds out his hand, and he's got this crystal that he had spotted from a distance. That's probably 1,000 years old. Yeah. He pulled some history out of that thing. And he was like 10. My uncles, one uncle got a laugh out of it, that one. He got a good giggle out of it. The other uncle, who is a geologist, took one look at that thing and was like, no, that's bad luck, and walked away. So, thus I'm assuming why we had to beat Joe up so much is the bad luck from the Mayan crystal. I'm also assuming that's why Joe got bigger and stronger than all of us. And now picks on all of us. But I digress. More normally, if I'm being honest, we kind of found ourselves in this precarious situation where me and Joe were pitted against the two older brothers. That's just kind of how things shake out when you're a younger brother, right? The older brothers, they had what they wanted to do, and we had what we wanted to do, and those never lined up. There's a specific moment that kind of sticks out to me that I thought about this a lot because I was wondering how to describe Joe, but I didn't want to use like the typical older, like you're in a bar kind of deal. So there was this one time we were at mom's house, and my mother has this beautiful house up on the hill. She uses a bed and breakfast. There's a lot of entry points, there's a lot of windows. My brothers locked me and Joe out. For like the 1 hour mom decided to leave the house, right? So they knew they had an hour to pick on the brothers. So me and Joe are outside trying to like navigate our way through the snow and find an entrance into the house. And we're going from door to door in a panic, trying to get inside, right? Because our feet are freezing. And they're locking windows, but they're always one step ahead because, they're older and faster and smarter than we are.
Barefoot?
So eventually, we were barefoot. Yes, you're ready. You heard the story? So eventually what happens is we lost all hope. we weren't getting back in the house. We were gonna have to wait for Mom to get home. And Joe looked so sad. And finally I'm like, Joe, there is no way back into the house. And Joe looks at me and he goes, and by the way, Joe's little, right? So I don't know if you guys know about Joe, but Joe's had a speech impediment when he was little. He struggles with a few words. You should ask him about it.
Never happened.
Joe looks at me. Joe looks at me with this like, I've had an idea. He's like, the playroom window. You can still fit through it because I was the smallest.
It was a good idea.
It was a great idea.
All you do is beat up.
You know, and because I was so intellectually advanced, I went, brilliant. And I don't know if you remember this, Joe, but what we did is we schemed up a whole plan together.
Oh, yeah.
And we ran to Mom's garage door. Why did we go to the garage? Because there was no window at the garage door. So they couldn't see us there. And me and Joe came up with a whole thing, and I'm like, Joe, we should just give up. And Joe goes, no, we can't give up. And he started putting on the show of a lifetime. He's banging the door and yelling, and I snuck around the back. And I crawled in that window, and I locked my brothers in the garage. Joe ran back around, and we got back in the front door, and I locked that door, and I went, we got him. We got him.
Suckers.
So we had about 5 minutes of being so victorious, just really living it up. You know, the only way you can feel if you are a little brother that never wins. We loved it until they started pounding on the garage door. Joe, Anthony, we're so cold. It's so cold out here. And I have very little empathy, apparently, because I was like, we just spent an hour in the cold. But I looked over at Joe, and he was crumbling. He was crumbling. Guy could not hold it together. And he looks at me, and he's like, brother, should we let him in? And I'm like, no! No! So they start doing that thing where they're like, look, we promise we won't hurt you. You know? And I immediately denied it because I was relishing in my victory. And and Joe just got worse. And he looked so sad. Every time one of them knocked on the door, I went, we're so cold. And finally, I go, Joe, do you really want to let him in? And Joe goes, and he looks at me. He looks me in the eyes. And he gave me this really, like, a very sincere look. He nodded. So the next time they asked, I said, okay, let's broker an agreement. So the next 5 minutes, we worked out the details of how to let them in and how they weren't going to hurt us and all that stuff. No, we will never hurt you. We would never do that. And I looked at Joe one more time, and he gave me that look. One more time, and he nodded again. And after they promised they wouldn't hurt us, I unlocked that door. Yeah, they beat the crap out of me. Charlie horses all over her legs. Black and blue.
Charlie horses, they beat the shit out of us.
I thought he was gonna say the time he put the plastic things in his diaper.
So this is the reason I bring up this story. So that look Joe gave me, what I realized, even at that young age, it was kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting to reflect on it, and this is why I specifically remember it, is Joe looked at me, and he knew that they were going to hurt us. He knew that we were going to let them in, and they were going to beat us up. But Joe couldn't stand watching his brother, somebody he loved, be cold and outside anymore.
That's right.
And that's kind of just the person Joe is.
That's Joe. Is that Joe? Joe.
Joe has one of the biggest hearts I've ever seen. He loves his people so much that even if he knows it's going to hurt him, he's going to go out of his way for them. Joe, you're one of the hardest working, most caring people I've ever met. Your loyalty to the people you love is unquestioned. Occasionally you get put in a situation where you have to choose two people you love.
I hate it.
But most of the time in our family, there's like, are they really situations choosing between us? There's one story that I think is hilarious that describes that. So,
He's done with story.
the brothers, my grandfather, Grandpa Resitaritz, Brittany, and Uncle Zon. You. We all came kind of to a decision that we were going to go from my father's place in Florida over to Amelia Island. My dad has a pontoon boat there. We wanted to get appetizers and a couple of drinks. So we drove over from my dad's place, and Dad proceeded to tie up on an old shrimp boat because he couldn't find a place to park the place we normally do. Right? He couldn't talk over the normal place. So we tie up to this old shrimp boat, which we are absolutely not supposed to tie up to, and the captain is there, and he comes out just so grumpy. The grumpiest old fisherman you've ever seen. So, from one fisherman to another, my dad and my little brother did what the only thing that was logical, and brought out a bottle of rum, and they made best friends with that fisherman. So, the reason I bring up this part of the story is because it might have a little bit to do with why we were just a little bit more inebriated than we should have been. Because we had a couple extra drinks with that old shrimp crab captain. So we had our appetizers, we were having a great time. We decided to go home, it's a little later at night, and Dad gets us all on the pontoon boat, and we're driving home, and Brittany is blaring AC/DC. I think Thunderstruck's going. Just, right? And these conversations are going, and I don't know if you've hung out with a lot of recitarians, but we're unusually loud. So everyone's trying to talk over each other. And I catch a snippet of Dad and Grandpa Resitaritz arguing about something. And it's definitely like a classic funny argument, right? And finally my dad just goes, "You know what, old man? I'm gonna kick your ass." And he jumps off and goes, and he grabs my grandpa and starts jokingly punching him in the ribs. And my grandpa starts punching him in the back, and they're yelling, and Joe goes, "No one hits my grandpa." And he throws his beer on the ground and jumps on my dad. So now we're all getting a good laugh out of, my little brother beating up his dad while his dad beat up his dad. And Brittany's back there just rocking out. And we all had this, I had this moment. I looked over at Christian, we got a good laugh, and I looked at Zonk, we got a good laugh. And then Zonk kind of goes, that's Uncle Zonk, by the way, I don't know if you guys know that guy. Uncle Zonk kind of looks at me and makes a face, which made me think for a second. And then Christian made a face at me. And then I realized, who was driving the boat? So, I panicked and jumped for the boat wheel, and we just narrowly avoided running up on a sandbar. I mean, you could hear the grass wisping along the side of the boat as we pulled away. I bring this story up for a few reasons. Not only does Joe have one of the biggest hearts I have ever seen, but he's fiercely loyal to his family. He's a protector of those who need protecting. He wasn't gonna let my dad pick on my grandpa because he knew Grandpa couldn't handle my dad. I actually have so many very serious examples of Joseph standing up for the little person and being there for me even. Notice how I separated myself from that? Little person and me. how you get your last. We'll see.
You're going to be a lot of fights in the days. Never stand up for you.
That is true.
That's stories for tonight.
Joseph always took care of me, and I needed a lot of taking care of. The point is, somewhere along the span of my life, I've come to realize that I don't see my little brother as someone that needs guidance, but as a peer that I can respect and look up to. A man that will always stand up for what he believes is important and right. And I feel like, honestly, that's extremely rare these days.
Yes.
Brittany. Brittany, I met you first on the bleachers of Homer High School. Just a slip of a girl who was too nervous to come over and talk to Joe. Now look at us. Could you ever have imagined you'd be stuck spending so much time with us? I watched you turn from that nervous girl into a mature woman, into a badass fishing captain.
Yes.
Into a person that can truly do it all. I wish you all could see the reality of what we do in Bristol Bay. I wish you could see how Brittany has conquered what so many people have failed to conquer.
That's right.
You're compassionate, long-suffering, and so intelligent. She basically single-handedly plans anything worth doing in all of our trips.
Like her mother.
Woo! I see how you both have formed a team that complements and supports each other, and my heart feels so full. As an older brother that loves nothing more in this world than his family, and has always wanted the absolute best for his little brother, I could not have asked for a better person to call sister-in-law. You have shown that you can go through the hard times in life and conquer them. I mean, the fact that you can put up with all of his crazy brothers is mind-boggling. One of the best moments in my life is getting to be in Greece and watching on a miraculously empty mountainside, Joe get down on one knee with the sun setting behind you and asking you to marry him. Seeing the happiness and love pouring out of both of you was a moment of a lifetime. The nature of it pressing into each other with joy and permanence that is rarely seen today. I tried to think of when I started to think of you as a sister, Britt, and I honestly couldn't remember when it happened. It wasn't a moment for me, but something more gradual. And I'm happy it's that way. There are so many moments you've stood by my brother, gave him sideways glances, and laughed with us until our stomachs hurt. And there should be a moment that specifically was one. But that's not how we grew up. You have grown with us as a family member for most of our lives, and I truly couldn't imagine living without you. I will never forget laughing until my cheeks hurt when I walked into a room to hear Joe asking what his social security number was.
That's right.
While he was on the phone with someone. She responded.
Caretaker.
Handler. She's a handler. She responded without a second hesitation, by the way. It was actually incredible to me. Simply put, simply put, my brother can't live without you, and I'm so thankful that he will never have to. Brittany, I guess what I'm trying to say is thank you so much for bringing so much love, hope, happiness, and organization to my little brother's life. So, Joe.
No.
Joe?
No.
I did a little research, man. And I found something interesting. Bad luck ends after a 10-year period. Brother, 10 years after you found that priceless crystal, in the ruins you had the best luck of your life and met Brittany. almost 10 years after that, you have the opportunity to do something so much more important and priceless than any sparkling, mysterious 1,000-year-old stone could ever do for you. You did the smartest thing in your life. You asked the greatest treasure in your life to marry you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Brittany!
Joe, you don't have to run away from home anymore. You found her. She's right here. And I know that luck will have nothing to do with the happiness and incredible life you will build with her. I love you both so much. Cheers. To Brittany and Joe.
Joe! Cheers!